And Devon Givens joins us right now. Devon.
Hey man, well, and since you're talking about Glatt, they have a lot of people pulling their hair out through these first 13 games, so
Why didn't I
they
think
gonna
of
get
that?
some business, man. They're gonna get some business, man, for sure.
Can I
With
use
all
that
the
in
stuff
tomorrow's
that's been
read?
going. Please do, Johnny. Please do.
Um,
Please do.
all right, so I
Tomorrow they
look
might
at
have a win under their belt, though. So you might want to change that up a little bit.
I agree with you. I think they win tonight. Right? I mean, the three and a half point favorites at Memphis. I know Morant's not going to play, but still, the way they've been
Plus,
playing, they should be underdogs against anybody. But
and it's the second night of a back-to-back. Memphis lost last
they
night to the
lost
Denver
last night.
Nuggets.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So when I think of you as a 76er, I'll say personality, because you're like Kyle's the reporter, Derek's the numbers guy, and then you're the 76ers guy. You did pre and post for many years on the Fanatic. You've been around this team. Even before we had the rights at the Fanatic, you were the 76er guy. Since I've known you, you were the 76er guy, right? And I would consider you a positive 76er person, right? Like I get very emotional and I can be negative based on what's happening with the team, right? But you always like you give criticism and everything else, but you're objective. And I think ultimately you would rather be positive than negative on the 76ers, which is why I love you, because we need that. We need some positivity in this town. How do you feel about all this? Like, where are you right now with what we found out from yesterday? How do you feel about Joel Embiid going forward?
Well, it's not as positive, of course, as you would imagine, because of how things have gone. And when we were talking last week, you and I brought up the fact that they were only 3 games back of fourth place in the Eastern Conference, and right now, I believe they're still only about 4 or 5, maybe even no more than 6 games. I didn't check the standings after last night's action, but um, it's not good. Even I, as you said, try to look for some of the positives. We already know what those are: Jared McCain and a little bit of sprinkling, a little bit of Gershon Yabusele, and that's it. And the fact that Tyrese Maxey is also coming back. But after all of this, number one, it needed to happen after a game like that. You were up 19 points, Johnny, in that game. And that was one, as you said, tonight is a lock for you because of the number in the second night of a back-to-back for the Memphis Grizzlies. That one, when we were watching the game in the office and we're sitting there seeing them take this 19-point lead against the Miami Heat, we said, okay, they figured some things out. Everything is working out. The 19-point lead has been built. You know Miami's going to make a run. They just have to stave off that run, make their own run again to extend it back to the double digits. That did not happen. The third quarter was awful. They scored 16 points, tying Tyler Hero for the high of the quarter. 16-16, Tyler Hero, even the numbers against them. So after the game, it had to happen. And I'm glad it happened. It's unfortunate that we're in this space 13 games in, but it had to happen. And as I said on the show, Johnny, after the game, I sat there for a second and looked at the broadcast as I was finishing up some of our notes. And I saw Kyle Lowry and Joel Embiid sitting on the end of the bench in an animated discussion. Not that they were yelling at each other and in a about to get into a fight kind of way. It was more of this is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Everybody else is walking back to the locker room. Those two guys are sitting on the bench and they're talking this out. And then we find out that they were in the locker room because of a players only meeting. Well, not a players only meeting, but a team meeting. Nick Nurse spoke up, team spoke up, and all that. So there's nothing positive to really discuss outside of Jared McCain of what this team is right now. And Joel Embiid, as injured as he may be, if you're a star like you are, a superstar like you are, and you're getting yourself back into it, there are ways to go about it without looking like the way that he did. And then you could see the body language that always gets in the way and that type of stuff. And that can zap the energy of any team when it just is, right? It doesn't matter if it's sports or if it's in a normal workplace, that can zap the energy. And not only did he zap the energy of his teammates and that meeting had to happen, the energy of the fan base, all of us who watch the team and look at the team the way that we all do, Johnny, it zapped the energy of everyone else too. And now they have to bring that back. I don't know how they're going to do it. It starts tonight, as you mentioned, as a favorite on the road against a Memphis team that is shorthanded. But the energy has been zapped, and they have to figure it out. And it needed to start, number one, with that team meeting. Step number two is going out there and winning the game.
Yeah. Based on what you've heard previously, and you look at Embiid's stats, man, he's averaging over 30 every year. He's averaging over 10 rebounds. He's won the MVP. We know the type of player that he is when it's good Embiid. But based on what you've heard, what is being brought up in the team meeting is that Joel Embiid is quote late for everything, right? Has this been a problem previously? We've questioned
Yes.
we've questioned the work ethic, getting out of shape, the Chick-fil-A stuff or whatever. But is this something that's been happening more than just this year? Is this something that's been a problem with Joel Embiid?
Yes, but it has been better over the last couple of years. I don't know why it's cropped up again this particular season. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. But yes, in the past it has been. And look, this has been an organizational thing too. You know, like you said, the Chick-fil-A thing, the weight gain. If you remember the Keith Pompey story years ago when he wasn't playing, and remember he ballooned to reportedly by Keith 300 pounds. And he took offense to that. Joel Embiid did, because who wants to be looked at as, all right, you're this guy who's in great shape, even though you're not playing, but someone says that you're now over 300 pounds. So he got his back up about that. But Keith was right, because he wasn't the only one after you find out that was like, yeah, this guy did that. But yes, years and years ago, this was the problem. John, you remember even when he wasn't himself at that time, when he got into he had to be sent home from Utah because of the altercation he had with a staff member back then. So we remember all these things, lateness. And again, it's not just him, it's an organizational thing. I remember stories being told to me years ago about how Nerlens Noel, who wasn't playing yet, was late all the time. He had to be fined because he was late all the time, holding up the team plane because he's late all the time, holding up the team bus all the time. So it's something that they allowed to happen. He has gotten better at it, but it has gotten to a point again where Tyrese Maxey felt the need to say this in the meeting reported by Shams, and that can't happen. As the leader of this team, everything that he talked about after the season, where he made it very clear to tell all of us that he spoke to Daryl Morey after they lost in the playoffs and said, "This can't happen. I need to be better." Well, if you need to be better, it shouldn't be in the spot once again where Tyrese Maxey is telling you about your tardiness 13 games into the season. It's one thing to be battling back from an injury and trying to get yourself in the game shape because of that injury, and the mental side, battling that as well. But you shouldn't have to have your 24-year-old all-star, who is like your little brother, tell you what you need to do. Right.
And he's the only one that can really say it. After speaking with some people and maybe some people with the team, does this feel like to you a last-ditch effort of almost like with Allen Iverson when they almost traded him to Detroit many years ago, and he responded with, they went to the NBA Finals that year, and then he kind of crept back into some of those old habits. But after talking with people, does this feel like listen, like either you have to change or it's time to move on? Is this kind of the last edict to Joel Embiid? Because they've never aired him, and I feel like this came from the Sixers. Shams got this from the Sixers. Does this feel like that because he's being hung out like wet laundry, man? Is this kind of the last effort by the Sixers to be like, hey, you got to change or we're moving on?
Possibly. And the one beauty of that, for him at least too, Johnny, is that he can't be traded until next season, in the offseason. He can't be traded this year during the season because of his new contract extension. So it's not as if this could come up in February, right, where we're hearing discussions about him being moved to, pick your club. But this possibly, it could be. But I'd imagine it's going to take a lot for that to happen, even something like this. And when you even think about it too, man, just bringing in Paul George. You brought Paul George in here, not just for Tyrese Maxey, but for the sole reason of giving Joel Embiid help. And because of that, I would push back and say, at least answer your question right now and say, maybe. I would lean more towards no, but maybe, of course, because we've seen him get his act together. And when he's gotten his act together, we know what it looks like when he's himself. He's an MVP candidate, and he's the best player on the floor many nights against whomever they're playing, including in the playoffs.
No, I mean, I agree, but if he doesn't respond and he's mopey Embiid, and we've seen him be mopey Embiid, if he doesn't respond, see, here's what I would predict happens. Because, even without Joel Embiid, they can win around in the playoffs if they construct their team with Embiid not being here. It's one thing this year when you have Embiid, but you can build a team that can win a round in the playoffs and then lose, because that's what Joel Embiid's been. I'm tired of, but like you had Paul George and you had this player and you had that player. Like at some point, the elephant in the room is Joel Embiid's not good enough as the best player on this team. And it ain't working. And it's time to move on. And you wonder if the Sixers are saying, hey, we hope he responds. I'm sure the Sixers hope he responds. Of course you would want to. Right? But if he doesn't and they lose in the playoffs again, the finger is now going to be pointed at Joel Embiid. And how does he handle it? He's already told the city and the fans, like, be careful how you talk about me. Because once he decides he wants to be gone, and you have the Marcus Hayes piece, and he moped around after that, but for the first time, I think the finger and the bullseye could be really pointed at Joel Embiid. And like if they fail again, he may decide he wants to be gone. And I'll say this, Devon, this is the last year. If he improves and they make a run, they don't have to win a title. I'm not looking at the Sixers to win a title this year. I think they can. But if I see a different player and a different attitude, then I would consider bringing him back. But at this point, I think it's time to move on.
Yeah, I'm not there yet, and just because, and you're fair to think like that, because as you said, look at what we've dealt with in the city and watching this team and evaluating this team and seeing exactly how he plays in these big moments. And yeah, if they do get to the postseason and he underperforms once again, and you hear about all that stuff, you know those conversations are going to pop up, and they probably should after 8 years of getting to the postseason and nothing happening past the second round. You can understand why they might want to look to move on. And even with him, though, he has to play well in order for his value to be normally what we believe Joel Embiid's value to be, because right now it's at rock bottom. I mean, is anybody going to trade for him right now and give you exactly what you feel? And you know how Daryl Morey works. Let's go back to the Harden and even the Ben Simmons sagas. He's not trading anybody unless he's getting exactly what he feels the player is worth back. So if that is not something that he believes he's going to get in a deal for Joel Embiid in the offseason, this could push all the way to the start of training camp, the start of the season, like it did with James Harden, simply because Embiid and the Sixers were ousted in the postseason, didn't look very good. He didn't look good individually, and his trade value is very, very low. So that's how I would look at it. Right now, I'm not there with you, but I would agree with you that if he doesn't, those conversations would come up again. I'm personally not ready to do it, but yeah, I am. He frustrates me in this way too, where I'm like, all right, enough is enough. It's time. It's time.
Devon Givens, you doing pre and post tonight, dude?
Yeah, we have pre and post 8:00 game tonight. So it's 7:30 pregame, post game following. And as you said, no Ja Morant, no Zach Edey because of injuries that they have sustained. We'll see if Desmond Bane plays tonight. Because he's basically just coming back from his injury, second night of a back-to-back. We'll see what they look like with Jaren Jackson as the lead guy, and see what the Sixers can do against this Memphis Grizzlies team. Hopefully we get to see the big three for the first time, Johnny.
Joel's going to have to talk after the game, which should be really interesting. Will he talk today? Will they have a shoot-around where he talks today? Nick Nurse speak today?
Yeah, he'll be the only one to speak. So if he speaks, he's going to be asked about the team meeting and what came out of it. Yeah. And of course the report of Shams and what Shams had to say.
Do you think the Sixers designed this to be like, after it happened, they said, let's leak it? Nick Nurse came right out and said, sorry for the hold up. We were for an hour. We had a team meeting. I'm not going to talk about it. And then Shams has it out the next day. To me, this seems like a good way for the 76ers to get this out there. If that's the case, I mean, because the other place it could be coming from is Clutch, who represents Shams and Tyrese Maxey, and that would be a really bad look for
Nurse and Tyrese Maxey. Yeah.
So that would be a really bad. Like if you want to have internal conflict, have Clutch Sports leaking out that Joel Embiid's showing up late to everything and Tyrese Maxey's the savior. To me, this feels like it came from the Sixers for good reason.
Yeah, I would agree, and the good reason is to get it out there again, to put some of that pressure back on Joel Embiid. They had his back for the Marcus Hayes thing. They had his back in general about not starting the season.
Everything.
And in this particular one, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of people that this could have come from. That's one candidate, the agency, of course.